Hi, I'm Harrison Ford. I'm appearing in a new film called Firewall, coming out February 10th. And I'm here with Firewall director Richard Loncraine. We're going to interview each other and answer some of the questions that you've sent in, and some of the questions that we've been dying to ask each other for a long, long time. I'll start with the first question. Is Firewall a plausible scenario, Keith wants to know, or do moviegoers have to suspend their disbelief?
Not very much in this movie. I mean, one of the things that I think separates it from most thrillers is that we spent an enormous amount of time getting it real, getting it right. We don't have the joke video screens with Star Trek graphics on them. We use what's real.
Yeah, when we were in the scripting phase of this, when everything was a potential possibility, we did test out our theory with banking professionals and computer software designers. And to a man, the scenario that we were proposing caused them a bit of grief.
They weren't too happy.
And if ever there was a question of whether or not it were logical, then we added the dramatic element that is part of our story, which is that their family are being held hostage by ruthless killers with guns to their head. All of them did easily commit to the idea of the film.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that we had to do in the movie was to make it slightly more complicated to rob the bank than it is in real life.
Yeah.
Shh, don't tell anyone that. Researching this character, what surprised you the most?
Frankly, not much. We had done a lot of work in research during the early stages.
You are very fussy about character driven. I mean, you don't like going to sort of vast amounts of background and sort of who married who 15 years ago, but you won't do anything on set that isn't absolutely in character, which is great. I mean, but you were very tough about it.
An actor has the potential to do anything. What you really need to confine yourself to is whatever will help serve the film, serve the story, because it doesn't matter how good you are as an individual if the whole mishigas ain't working.
True.
And it works, and I thank you very much.
Pleasure.
For what you did.
It was
to make it work.
Shutting up was a great skill, knowing when not to tell you to do something. No, it was.
Richard, I've always wanted to ask,
why did you take up directing?
well, of all the range of options, what attracted you to this particular project?
You mean apart from the fee?
Yes, apart from the fee, which is a given. We all know about that.
The reality was I wanted to do a thriller, and I'd read 40 of them, and they didn't work. And then you and Paul, basically, to be honest. The combination of you two together, I just knew would be something I couldn't walk away.
Richard had made a film with Paul Bettany, which was, I think, the relationship you guys developed, having worked together earlier, was of great aid. Because you had your hands full. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? You had your hands full dealing with me. At least you didn't have to
bother with these understatements? Why these understatements all the time?
All right.
If you could live the life of one of the characters you portrayed, which would it be?
I don't even know how to approach such a question. All of the characters that I've played only exist in my mind in the context of the story that we were telling.
But you do bring, every time you do a character, you bring a bit of something of your own character to it, probably. Depends who it is, I suppose.
Well, I think you do. I think even when you're playing a character that's as far from you as a Russian submarine captain, you only have your own understanding, your own capacity, your own experience to bring to bear on it. And so who you are, what you are, is the raw material that you use in telling the story of somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's really rather more, I think, a question of censoring out those things that are not appropriate to the character than it is the other way around.
Yeah, it's good. Interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Richard, Dan Braustein from Coral Gables, Florida, wants to know what movies inspired you to be a filmmaker.
God, the movies that I love most, I guess, is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I think it's one of the great movies. Brief Encounter.
There's a contrast for you.
Yeah, they are, but they're all about dialogue and acting, I guess, for me. I mean, for me, it's all about character. I think John Schlesinger, who I worked for as a young, I wasn't a director, I was a sculptor. I worked with him for a number of years, and I thought he was a remarkable director, I think, for some of the films he made. So probably him and those two movies, really. But I never understood why I became a film director. It just I didn't plan to be one, as it probably shows.
No.
Why did you... Oh, it sounds too indulgent. It's like, enough about me, what do you think of my last movie? I was going to ask you why you chose me to do this movie. There's thousands of directors. I've never asked you that, actually.
You haven't?
No. Cheap? Was I cheaper than anyone else?
When your name came up, I had not seen that many of your films. First of all, I'm not a big movie buff, and so I don't go that often. I had seen Wimbledon, so I was aware of Paul through that film. But when I saw Richard III, and I didn't see all of it the first time, I didn't know that you were the director of it, but I thought it was magnificent texture to it. It was just such a full screen. There was so much life captured in it, and this in a context where the language is a bit of a barrier for contemporary folks. And then, forgive me, but I can never remember the name of that. Yeah, the Albert Finney one.
Gathering Storm, that church.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I just said go in that one, really, and he did it. But
well, then
I said go beautifully.
You said, yeah, and you had the right people going in the right direction. So I think that was really a remarkable film as well. Richard, what were some of the challenges of making this movie, other than me?
Other than you, yeah, you got there just before me on that one. What weren't the challenges? Yeah. It started. Every time I make a movie, I say to my wife, "This film's impossible. It's the hardest film." And she says, "Every time you do a movie, you say that." And I guess it's true. They're always the hardest movie. And I think if you don't, this turned into probably one of two of the happiest films I've made in my life, and it was probably it started as the most tense, politically difficult film. Finish this sentence. The three things I love about movies are...
living other people's lives and having the opportunity to research and experience some small amount of what it's like to be a policeman or a heart surgeon or a security analyst, or whatever it is that the character you play is doing. I think that's one. I think the second thing is, for me, the emotional exercise of being the continued opportunity to give emotional expression to your intellectual or interior reality is really a good thing for people that are sort of emotionally invested in life. And the third thing is that it's so much better than a real job.
It is. It does beat working. Definitely beats working.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
The cheat. I call it the cheat on life. It isn't. As you said, it is. We work very hard. It's not as glamorous a business as it looks. A lot of standing around in the rain and being shouted at if you're a director. But I still love that. Yeah, yeah.
This is shouting at shit. I mean,
I do. People shout at me all the time. I get shouted at. What else do I love about it? I love the acquiring new knowledge. The fact that you can ring anyone up and say, as we did on this, heads of corporations, banks, and say, "Excuse me, but I'm making this film. Could you tell me about?" And people pour their hearts out to you. Yeah. Fantastic. I love acquiring new knowledge. So that's great. The third thing, I think I'm not a very secure, confident person underneath this arrogant exterior, and I think actually trying to do something that is probably going to fail, and maybe getting it right. If I get it right, it makes me feel slightly less, more confident. It makes me feel slightly more confident. That's what I think.
Thank you, Moviefone, for giving us the opportunity to talk about Firewall.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. Good question. Thanks again. made that very easy.